where I was seeing something on screen that was incredibly beautiful and different and unique and crisp and lifelike. It just it was it started out great, and then suddenly Cara Delevingne and her co-star started speaking, and it suddenly started to go downhill from there. All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Morning After. And today is July 27th of 2017. There's a lot of stuff to get to today, including some gaming stuff, GTA 6 in development. We also have a bunch of movie reviews today. We have Valerian, we have War of the Planet of the Apes, and we have, of course, Dunkirk. Because today I'm doing my very first post-movie review after I go see Atomic Blonde tonight, I believe at 7 p.m., so we'll see how that movie turns out, but it's something I'm really excited about just because it has really, really cool energy behind it, and it just seems like something a little different to what we're completely used to, and because I'm a big fan of John Wick, so, I mean, this is like perfect for me. All right, let's start off with release date news, and of course we have Patapon Remastered releasing on August 1st, and we have also the August PlayStation Plus games, which were announced. We have Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, which was a standalone game that came out with Black Flag that kind of talks a little bit, or, you know, has a little bit of commentary about slavery, and it's a really, really cool game. So definitely check that out. And of course, we have Just Cause 3. A few days ago, I think they announced multiplayer mod, the launch of multiplayer mods for PC and on Steam. So I don't know if this is just to get people interested in Just Cause again, but it's definitely a game that's heavy on mods, especially on PC. So being able to see them release a game on PlayStation Plus where people can try it out and see if they're interested in maybe the multiplayer mod stuff, I think is cool. So the fact that we get those games for PlayStation Plus members is big. I mean, just having Just Cause 3 alone is a pretty big deal, because one of the big things that people have been complaining about is not having AAA titles accessible through PlayStation Plus. So now we have two big names, Just Cause and Assassin's Creed, headlining it. All right, let's move on to Games with Gold. Of course, for my Xbox followers, we have Slime Rancher making its debut on Xbox Games with Gold, and we have Trials Fusion, which was one of the first games I played on my PlayStation 4, and I just had a blast. Great physics. If you're a fan of the Trials games, definitely check that out. But I feel like if you are a fan of the Trials games, you probably have already played this. But it's really, really good, and it kind of has great graphics too, actually. So 2 thumbs up for that one. And if you have Xbox 360 still playing it, we have Bayonetta, and then we have Red Faction Armageddon as well. And then 2 quick ones: The Sims 4 coming to Xbox and PlayStation 4 on November 17th, and then we have releases of the PlayStation VR's first sports game. It's called Sparks. It releases on the 29th of August. All right, so November 17th for Sims 4, and PlayStation VR sports game Sparks releases on August 29th of 2017. Some more VR games for us, but I think it's at a price point of $30, so we'll see. All right, let's move on to articles from around the world, and today we have 2. This is not really an article, it's a blog post, but Niantic's founder addressed the Pokemon Go Fest issues in Chicago. Basically, just it's a pretty long blog, it's interesting, and it just talks about what exactly happened in Chicago, and so go read that article if you're interested in what exactly happened there, because it seems to be a lot of talk around it, and a lot of fans were disappointed, especially to go to that fest and have a bunch of technical issues happen and not being able to play the game like you would have wanted. They even got booed on stage, which is interesting. You don't really see that a lot, especially in the gaming community during live events. Usually people are pretty energetic if you make it over to one of those events. It's online where the toxicity really is evident. But and then we have another article from GearNuke.com. Nintendo Switch hardware is already a couple of years old, compares it to iOS devices, says Oceanhorn developer. Now this is just interesting to see exactly what certain developers feel. Now Oceanhorn developer is they're very much iOS and mobile centric, so they try to make their games for those platforms first and then build up towards PlayStation Vita and PlayStation 4, and it feels like that's something that has worked for them. But it's interesting to see them talk about Nintendo Switch. But he says that some mobile devices have the Tegra X1 chip, the Tegra, I forget the name of it, but yeah, he says that those chips are even stronger than what the Switch has right now, which I don't know what the deal with that is, but it's interesting to hear perspectives from different developers and exactly how they feel about the power of the Switch. And you're starting to see big AAA games that people have hoped would come up on the Switch starting to get a little less optimism for that. Okay, so let's move on to the rundown, and we start off with GTA 6 in development. Now this is a really, really interesting story, just because of course GTA 5 was one of the biggest successes in gaming history. It just blew everything out of the water at the time, and it's still selling. It still shows up on MPD every once in a while, I think every week or month or whatever, but it continues to sell really strong, and I think it's because of the presence of GTA 5 and its multiplayer and its online. It's just a huge, huge success, and they've really found a good framework for what they're going to build on in the future with Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA 6, which is apparently now in development. So the reason why people are starting to talk about this game in terms of it already being in development and it being quote-unquote confirmed is because a resume of an actor named Tim Neff listed GTA 6 alongside Red Dead Redemption 2, Reborn, and Mercenary Insurance as games that he's done mocap for. Now, again, a lot of people are saying that mocap is something that usually happens at the end of a development cycle. Or near the end of a development cycle. That is not necessarily true, especially if you're, let's say, give an example like Naughty Dog with The Last of Us Part 2. They started working on mocap a year prior to releasing that trailer, that reveal trailer that we saw. And some mocap can be just for a trailer release, maybe a cinematic trailer as well, but some mocap isn't completely just designated to stuff that you will see in game. So, they could be working on a trailer that comes out 6 months from now, maybe around December, maybe around the Game Awards time. I know that Rockstar has a pretty good relationship with Jeff Keighley. I always have trouble saying his name because I always want to say the G. Keighley, and it seems like they want to. I remember in 2014 they showed up to the Game Awards to accept the Game of the Year award for GTA 5, or a big award on that scale, and it just seems to me like they have a pretty good rapport with each other. So GTA usually does their own thing, but maybe they'll show up at the Game Awards and maybe they're just prepping up for that. We have 6 months, so that seems like a pretty good time to start mocap, and then maybe releasing a trailer in the future. But if we get a GTA trailer in the next 6 months or in the next year, that's pretty big. But considering it's Rockstar, they go by their own accord. So they could release their trailer tomorrow and announce it, and I wouldn't be surprised. Let's just put it that way. And again, yeah, like I said, I mean, it doesn't mean that the game is currently full-blown production, but at the same time it does mean that maybe they're just advertising or working on some advertisement ideas or something like that. They would just want to promote the game in a certain way. But with the success of GTA 5 and with the success of online, I wouldn't be in a rush to release this game or announce it anytime soon. Especially with GTA, they could announce it a couple of months before it comes out and it'd be completely still as successful. I mean, they could shadow drop it. That would be an interesting way to do it. But that title is so big that they could literally do something like that, and it could be just as successful as GTA 5 is. I mean, they're just on another stratosphere when it comes to that. All right, let's move on to the Dunkirk review. Now, I saw this in 70 millimeters. Now, it was the first time I think I've ever seen a movie in 70 millimeters, and it was interesting because I was sitting closer to the back, and you could kind of hear the projector and the just kind of flutter a little bit, and you could kind of hear the noise, and it was kind of nice. It felt like I was watching a movie, I don't know, like back in the day in the 70s or something. It really, really brought me, I wouldn't say brought me back because I wasn't alive during that time, but it just felt kind of cool. It just felt a little different. It just had a little different kind of energy behind it. Now this movie, when I walked into the theater, there was a mother sitting next to me, and she talked about how her daughter forced her to go to this movie to see Harry Styles. And this was, mind you, the very first possible showing of this movie, and in 70 millimeters no less. So we saw a teenage girl forcing her mother to go see the earliest possible showing of a war movie called Dunkirk, just because her favorite singer or boy crush was in the movie. So it shows you the power of getting a big name like that to promote your movie, while at the same time a movie that doesn't really have him in a whole lot of scenes. I mean, he is prominent, but it's not a movie that is necessarily like Harry Styles at the top. I mean, it's really all about Christopher Nolan's next film, and I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of his. I mean, I think I've loved pretty much every single movie that he's come out with. Some have been stronger than others, but this movie was just incredibly different to what he usually does. Not necessarily like the scale of it; it's just the way it was presented to us. And Dunkirk is a movie that, man, it's just from the very get go, it just has a very particular type of energy to it, a very different type of style. I think the fact that they played around with time in a very interesting way just made the movie that much more interesting to me. And what's really, really cool about this film is that it played around with the ideas that I have in my mind, or it kind of, you know, made me think about the importance that I have in characterization and the importance I have in creating characters and character arcs and all that stuff, because that really is non-existent in this film. So being able to see this film in 70 millimeters, it definitely seemed a lot more crisp, but I'm going to have to really just try it out a few more times to see if I actually believe that, because digital is just as crisp as I think it is. So maybe it's just bias because I really like the 70 millimeter format, but yeah, anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, Dunkirk doesn't really have a lot of character development, and you know, would I have liked a little bit more? Probably, just because I really like that kind of stuff. I really like having a character to root for throughout the whole entire film. But this is really a war movie that's about the essence of what it feels like to be there. And films like Saving Private Ryan really focused heavily, or pretty much every single war movie from then, you know, Band of Brothers and stuff like that, really focused on characters and having a group of people that kind of you could kind of grow with as you see the movie or the show. But this is different in that sense, that they really just tried to focus on what it feels like to be there. And then the score was spectacular. I mean, it was very simple. It was not very melodic. It was a lot more focused on just having a certain type of tone and pace and energy, and it was just really building up tension throughout the whole entire film. I mean, from the very, you know, it's interesting because from the beginning of the movie to the end, it almost felt like one piece. You know, you see a Star Wars movie and you see John Williams, and it feels like a bunch of separate pieces, and you like those pieces as different scenes for what they are. But in this movie, it really does feel like one very long, intricate piece. And it's just, you know, I really enjoyed the score for that. It was very different. And the reason that, you know, Christopher Nolan gets a lot of heat for the types of movies he makes from a certain type of crowd, because, you know, they feel like his dialogue and his screenplays are overly explanatory, and they just explain too much about the plot, and people feel like he doesn't trust his audience enough. But in this movie, I mean, he really gives all the trust over to the audience, and he really just kind of does something a little different in the sense that there really isn't much explaining. I mean, at the very beginning of the film, there's some text to kind of give you a context for what's going on, but throughout the film, it's really just all about the war and the feeling of what it feels like to be there. And there's no dialogue, really. There's very little dialogue throughout the film. It's just really all about building tension, music, and seeing beautiful scenery that felt very, by the way, very real. Nothing in that movie did I feel like, okay, that's CGI, that's very different for a war movie like that. It just felt like the bullets and the fighter plane sequences were amazing. I mean, I really felt like you were there. It's absolutely phenomenal. I might go back to see this movie in IMAX. It's a standout film of the year for sure. I'm still a little debating as to whether I can nominate this movie for, or not nominate it, but put it up there with the top movies of the year so far. But it's definitely up there. But I just want to see if it's like one or two right now in my mind, because I have another movie that I'm going to talk about in a little bit that I'm very high on. Okay, let's move on to Valerian Review, which started out very strong. I was excited to see how this film turned out, because I'm again seeing this director kind of do a film like this again, especially with Fifth Element, and how excited I was and how pumped I was, because that film is just so great. And so different and so unique and so colorful and so vibrant, and the characters are so eccentric and weird. And seeing this movie, I just felt like it was going to be more in line with that. And it started out very, very strong. It gave me that Avatar effect where I was seeing something on screen that was incredibly beautiful and different and unique and crisp and lifelike. It started out great. And then suddenly, Cara Delevingne and her co-star started speaking, and it suddenly started to go downhill from there. And I'm not high on this film anymore. I cannot stand bad acting. I cannot stand bad dialogue. It ruins a film for me, no matter how beautiful or interesting or unique things the film is doing. If there's bad acting and bad dialogue, you just pull me out of it 1,000%. And if they nailed that part, I know it's incredibly difficult to have a good script and everything, but if they would have just nailed that part, this movie would have been on another level just because there was so many visual things going on that were interesting and so many high concept ideas too for a sci-fi film. I mean, there was a specific really long sequence near the beginning of the film where they were in a market, but you can't it's almost like they're in a desert, and then they put on some VR glasses and suddenly they're in a market with like 1,000 stores, and it seems like a big kind of deal there in that area to go there and shop. And it was a really high concept idea to see a desert like this. It kind of looks like an amusement park, but very just absolutely nothing there. And then suddenly, you put on some VR glass and you start walking around and you shop, and suddenly the world is real, and it's just as real if it were physically there. So that those concepts like that is one of the strong points of this film. But at the same time, I mean, when you have Cara Delevingne acting the way she is, and I forget the actor of the male acting lead, which was kind of trying to do something Han Solo like the strongest, most interesting man on the planet, just like it was off, especially aligned and alongside the dialogue. It's just there was a clash there that I did not enjoy through the very beginning of the film to the end. I mean, it was a movie that had a lot of potential and could have possibly just really wowed people and surprised people, but because of the problems with the dialogue, because of the problems with the writing, and because of the problems with the acting in the film, it really just went downhill. And there was the most interesting parts were probably Rihanna's dance sequence, that 1,000 store VR sequence in the beginning that I just talked about, and maybe a couple of really cool kind of combat sequences as well, where he's like, going through walls, or like 50 walls, and he's just bouncing around. And I mean, those sequences were cool to see. But other than that, I mean, this film was just really lacking any sense of heart. And yes, there are people that are really passionate making this film, and they're really excited about what they're doing. But yet again, the movie has to come together as a whole, and it feels like for all the advancements and all the cool stuff that they did with sci-fi and CGI and high concept ideas, they really faltered when it comes to writing and dialogue and acting. I mean, it was almost like this movie was very inconsistent. All right, let's move on to War of the Planet of the Apes. Now, this damn movie, I would say it's probably the best, or this movie had the best first half of the year. The second half was very, very strong, but it was not even close to as strong as the first half of the film, I thought. Through its pacing, through its acting. And by the way, man, Andy Serkis is phenomenal as Caesar. I mean, it just feels like every single time he releases a movie, especially in the Planet of the Apes universe, this trilogy, he seems to be getting better and better. And this movie is kind of like his just perfect, he's just absolutely mastered Caesar, and how he acts and his mannerisms and his movement and his facial expressions. It's incredibly lifelike, and that's another thing that I have to say about this film. Outstanding CGI. One of the most breathtaking experiences I've had in a movie theater was going to see, again, Avatar. I saw that movie a couple of times, and just because I was purely blown away by the visuals. Of course, it had like a Pocahontas kind of feel to it and story, and I loved that movie so much that it just was very easy for me to like Avatar. But seeing this movie had a very, very similar effect in terms of the CGI, and it's very hard to impress people. It's incredibly difficult to impress people nowadays when things are so real, and it just seems like the returns that you get from being wowed by CGI is starting to get lesser and lesser. So, seeing how realistic these apes were alongside humans, I mean, it was really, really good in Rise. of the Planet of the Apes, but or Dawn, sorry, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But seeing it this time around, it's a lot more crisp. It's a lot more realistic and lifelike, and they just took it to another level. And it's you really have to just see it for yourself. I mean, they're really doing something. I think it's Weta, right? That's working on the CGI for this film. I mean, they're just phenomenal. Anyway, Woody Harrelson, if I had to give this movie a negative, would have probably been certain sequences that he was in, where he was where just the dialogue just wasn't there. It just seemed kind of off to how the dialogue was being delivered to us throughout the film. There's a sequence where Woody Harrelson's character and Andy Serkis's Caesar's character were talking to each other in a very important, by the way, important scene. And it just felt like Caesar was on another level in terms of delivering the dialogue and acting, and Woody Harrelson was just there was something about that scene that just felt a little off. I was like, why are you talking like that? It's not. It seems like Andy Serkis as Caesar is talking in a certain way, and he's talking in like platitudes, and like it's almost I wouldn't say it was Shakespearean or anything, but there were certain lines in there I was just like, why did you say it like that? Why did you say it like that? Why do you say it like that? And in a properly written dialogue sequence, especially one as important as that, I just felt like they could have written that scene a tiny bit better, especially with Woody Harrelson's character, to really just make that that scene really as impactful as they wanted it to be. But yet again, I'm talking about very minor details in a movie that is damn near perfect. I'm a huge fan of the Planet of the Apes, just this trilogy specifically. So the fact that this movie just lived up to those expectations says something really great about this film, and it's definitely on the top of my list in terms of films that I've seen this year so far. And then I have to just give a little highlight to Steve Zahn, who played as Bad Ape. I thought it was a really refreshing kind of introduction to this movie. I think it just gave a different perspective to what I think the Planet of the Apes movies are, and it was really, really cool to see his character and how funny and interesting he was. And it just added another element to it that I was not expecting, and it just made the movie that much better for it. So Steve Zahn as Bad Ape, thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, this movie is at the top of my list for movie of the year. So, I mean, I'm very, very high on it. And the ending was sad. It was sad to see it end. It will be interesting to see if they continue it in some format, but who the hell knows? All right. Let's move on to SNES Classic pre-orders canceled at Walmart. Walmart sent out cancellation emails, and the email said it was due to a technical glitch, and was mistakenly made available to people. Now, this is interesting because I think it was last Friday when and if you follow certain people on Twitter, they will let you know when certain things are out or available for pre-order, and some people, especially in the gaming industry, rush out. So that's why you see a bunch of articles on that today, because a bunch of people had especially not only a bunch of consumers, but a bunch of consumers that work in the gaming industry had their cancellations. They were notified of their cancellation of their SNES Classic pre-order. So, this is just another thing. It's just there's something with such great energy behind the announcement of the SNES Classic and the fact that we have Star Fox 2 and all these great games, especially with my favorite console of all time. Just having that energy just slowly dwindle as time gets closer and closer to the thing releasing. Just these little stories like this just really kind of bum me out. And again, it's just a pre-order canceling on a very big, by the way, superstore chain. But I feel like as we get closer, as more and more stores start to have this thing available, I think we'll be in the clear. I think we'll be all right. But there's some bad mojo surrounding this, bad mojo surrounding the NES Classic and what happened with that, and the fact that they're not going to release anymore. They really have to nail this because if not, there's going to be a huge backlash, if there's not already a lot. All right, let's move on to IMAX moving away from 3D after disappointing second quarter earnings. IMAX Entertainment CEO Greg Foster said they would cut back on 3D due to Dunkirk's 2D success. Now, this is interesting just because you would never think that Dunkirk is a big film, but when you think about IMAX and, the fact that they have, Star Wars films filmed in IMAX now, the fact that you have Dunkirk kind of holding its own weight as far as second quarter earnings is interesting to me. And the fact that they saw that people, really don't like watching 3D movies in IMAX, but rather an IMAX screen that they could actually see the edges to. IMAX is very different in 3D just because it's all encompassing, and the screen actually curves because it's so tall, and you just kind of feel incredibly immersed in it just because it's so big. But at the same time, it's like I could see how people could not want to see it in 3D because it's so overwhelming. It's almost like 3D doesn't have the same effect as it would on a non-IMAX screen. So I could see that. I kind of started thinking about it today. It's like, do I not watch IMAX 3D movies just because I feel like it's not as good as watching it in traditional theater? And there is a thing about that. I mean, 3D is great in certain movies. I mean, I wouldn't recommend watching 3D in all, but certain movies, I feel like, watching Star Wars the second time in 3D is probably really, really cool to watch. But definitely the first time I want to see it in 2D. But I like this kind of perspective from consumers that 3D is not ideal for IMAX films, and it kind of makes sense with how big the screens are. It just maybe 3D just doesn't have the same effect as it would if you could actually see the edges of the screen and consume 3D in a different way. It feels a little different. So maybe just the demand just isn't there for 3D. So I'm trying to articulate it the best I can as to why 3D might not be a thing for IMAX movies, but it seems like IMAX and 2D is where it's really at, is where it's really breathtaking and to another level. And like I said, they're going to be cutting back on it. So we'll see what that means for their financials, because obviously they're a business and they have to make sure they meet their projections, especially quarterly and yearly and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens, but it's just interesting to see that Dunkirk just move the needle in that way. All right, let's move on to Nioh DLC reactions. All right, let's my computer went to sleep, so all right, so this is called the Defiant Honors DLC launch trailer. All right, so let's go ahead and watch.
この闇は忍びの領分よ。
Team Ninja. That is cool.
勢は数で勝るが、難攻不落の大阪城へ攻め込むには出城の真田丸を落とさねばならぬ。真田幸村、厄介な男よ。
突国の侍、安仁が噂まことであったか。わしは関ヶ原に散った父に倣い、自らの義を貫く。ここは戦の要、真田丸は落とさせぬ。
Defiant Honor. Oh my goodness.
PS4.
All right, so this trailer just is just really, really, really great. It's just a little different to what I've already played so far of Nioh, so that's really interesting. Not only in terms of just the visual stuff that they're doing, and a new world and stuff like that, but or a new area, not world, a new area. But it seems like the combat has not necessarily evolved or anything, but they're just adding little intricacies to it. You see long range attacks as well, which I always enjoy in games like this. And we'll just talk about in general how I feel about Nioh, especially since we got it right there. and we still have to finish that damn thing. So we'll see how it goes. But that's a strong trailer. I really like the fact that it's DLC. It just feels like this game has released some DLC content that is actually very good, and it entices me to purchase it and just to involve myself in that game for just a little bit longer. And Neo has such great combat. I'm just incredibly high on it in terms of that. I mean, they could have changed a few things with diversity of enemies, and also with just changing up the areas a little bit, and some level design stuff there. But overall, we're talking about a game that's like a 9. It's really great. I feel like for the next Neo, they're just going to step it up even more and maybe solve some of the minor issues that I have with it. But overall, that's awesome. Defiant Honors DLC. Can't wait. Let's move on to the Star Wars The Last Jedi behind-the-scenes reaction. Now, again, I have already seen this, but a lot of you guys really wanted to see a reaction of me, reacted to the behind-the-scenes footage stuff. When it comes to Star Wars stuff, I sometimes have to see it in the moment, and that's what happened here. So let's just go watch this again, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Everybody set? 3, 2, 1.
Action. Episode 8. Gosh. The first film didn't even have a number.
He is all of us right now. He is all of us. Gorgeous.
Rian has written a story that's unexpected but right. Some of the stuff that happens, people are going to be like, oh my god.
Okay, that's nice to hear.
Even though I think I know it all, they throw things at me story-wise I never could have imagined.
I like that. Sounds like
And even
throwing a
though
curveball.
everybody knows that it's the second in a trilogy, it feels like its own thing.
Go.
Star Wars is so cool because there's all these creatures,
Oh my goodness.
all these amazing visual effects. But all the characters are also so complex.
Ryan needs to work on his Wookiee sounds. It's ridiculous. New director can't even just learn a Wookiee sound.
I know, right? That shot.
The storylines are becoming more established. We're really getting to know these new characters. Also with the characters that we know and love, we're seeing their lives change.
Everything is being shifted in the opposite way to what the audience expected after 7. Ryan's made Star Wars fresh and new.
I'm hoping it'll be a little shocking, but I'm hoping it'll feel real and honest.
It's our most ancient story of good against evil, told in the most fascinating way, but it has a real spiritual depth to it.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
God. This movie. It seems like the messaging behind this film, and it's the right messaging, especially from Lucasfilm's perspective. It could be true, it could be not. We'll see when we see the movie. But, there were various times during this behind-the-scenes footage that we saw, oh, Jesus, that they described, kind of like, oh, it seems a little different. Like they're in shock when they read the script, and like, Brian Johnson's doing something a little different this time around, and that is the kind of messaging behind it, that we're going to expect a different kind of Star Wars film. It very much in terms of surprises, in terms of the story, in terms of the place that we're going to be able to visit. That casino, is it called Canto Bight? Which is a really, really cool name. I wish I used it for my channel. But you know, that's the kind of how creative those people are over there. But just overall, I mean, the very first official teaser trailer was mind-blowingly good. It was very, very strong because it really stayed true to what a teaser is, and it just had, you know, tone piece pictures and, you know, elements that just really tease what this movie's all about, but while at the same time really not giving you too much at all. I mean, at the very end, I think that was the only story sequence where he says, where Luke Skywalker says, it's time for the Jedi to end. I mean, that was really the only story bit. Other than that, it was really just shots. Now here, it's more in line with that. I mean, we have no context for what we're seeing, but we are seeing more characters. We are seeing more creatures. And that's exciting to me personally, just because I want to see where it takes us moving forward, not only in terms of the story, but in terms of like what, you know, this studio can do and what these people making this movie can do in terms of you know, creature design and you know, making a set that is even more immersive than the Force Awakens was. It even more just interesting to look at. All of that stuff is very important for me, and I just can't wait. You know, a lot of people say that they hope that this movie is not Return of the Jedi, but yeah, I guess Return of the Jedi was to, or I guess, I don't know, man. You know, I have so many favorites, especially when it comes to the original trilogy, that it's like that, you know, some people have Return of the Jedi as their favorite, some people the original Star Wars is their favorite. It's just like, we don't really know. But at the same time, we're going to see this movie, and hopefully it's as impressive and as surprising as they're making it sound like. So again, this is my second time. Well, actually, not really second. I guess it's more of like the fifth time watching it. But it still gives me goosebumps. I mean, Star Wars is just on another level in terms of pop culture, in terms of just creating something that is that big and massive while still having heart and still having incredible acting and still having really, really great dialogue. It really and great cinematography and music. It feels like the whole package is there when you go see a Star Wars film, and the energy in the movie theater is always great to see it live. So again, don't watch Star Wars on an airplane. Don't watch Star Wars in your home, you know, months later after it's released. Watch it in the theater. Make that sacrifice. If there's one movie you have to watch a year in the movie theater, it's probably that one. Okay, let me know what you guys think about The Last Jedi behind the scenes reaction. We'll end the morning after with a feel-good moment of the day. The Town of Light percentage of sales will be donated to promote mental health awareness. If you know the game Town of Light, the publisher announced that they're going to release, or, you know, give percentage of their sales over to help promote mental health awareness. And, you know, as a person that is, you know, dealing with some mental health issues for sure, that is definitely something that is inspiring. It's great, and you know, more people should do for sure. So again, feel good moment of the day. Let me know what you guys think about the morning after. Let me know what you guys think about GTA 6, quote unquote, being in development. Again, you kind of have to take this as a grain of salt because it is coming from a resume but we've seen a lot of this stuff happen before. We've seen the official reveal and release later on. So I would say that it's highly, you know, it's very likely that GTA 6 is an actual game that's probably in development right now in some form, and maybe pre-production, maybe, who knows. But yeah, that's exciting. Let me know what you guys think about that, and of course, let me know what you guys think about Dunkirk, Valerian, War of the Planet of the Apes, and Walmart being dicks about the SNES Classic. All right. Well, actually, Nintendo being dicks about it. All right. Let's end it there. I'll see you tomorrow, and of course, expect some more reactions today. Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, is something that there'll be a video on that later today. So if you're excited about that, stay tuned, and more info on a lot more things, including later tonight, there'll be a review of Atomic Blonde, and then I'm working on the review for Pyre. So this is slowly starting to get to where I want it to be as far as the channel goes. So let me know what you guys think, and of course, see you guys later.